There's an absolutely delusional and insane psychotic article today from Elizabeth Spears, who's a Democratic digital strategist. It's called, "I Was Adopted. I Know the Trauma It Can Inflict." That's right. The left is so addicted to abortion that now they're going to pretend that adoption is bad. That's how addicted to abortion they are. They're trying to remove all other possibilities. So no marriage, no birth control, no abstinence before marriage, and now adoption is bad and creates conflict. Here is Elizabeth Spears. This is just psychotic crap. It truly is psychotic. Quote, "On Wednesday, as the Supreme Court heard oral arguments from state attorneys seeking to uphold Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban, Justice Amy Coney Barrett kept getting at one question. Why was abortion necessary when women who do not want to be mothers can simply give up their babies for adoption?" Again, this is an op-ed in the New York Times. "As an adoptee myself, I was floored by Justice Barrett's assumption that adoption is an accessible and desirable alternative for women who find themselves unexpectedly pregnant. She may not realize it, but what she is suggesting is that women don't need access to abortion because they can simply go do a thing that is infinitely more difficult, expensive, dangerous, and potentially traumatic than terminating a pregnancy during its early stages." Wait, hold on. More difficult, dangerous, and potentially traumatic to whom? The entire left-wing position rests on the complete dehumanization of a preborn child. That's what it rests on, right? Oh, it's so dehumanizing. I mean, here we have an option where the kid lives and just goes to another family that wants a baby, or we have the option of you stab it in the face. Those are the two choices. And, you know, I got to say, it's really dehumanizing to say that maybe the baby should live and go to another family, says Elizabeth Spears. And she's writing as an adopted kid. So how does she make that case? Because if her mother had made that choice, as Ronald Reagan used to say, the only pro-choice people who exist are people whose mothers chose otherwise. Right? As an adoptive mother herself, Justice Barrett should have some inkling of the complexities of adoption and the toll it can inflict on children as well as birth mothers. But she speaks as if adoption is some kind of idyllic fairy tale. My own adoption actually was what many would consider idyllic. I was raised by two adoptive parents, Alice and Terry, from the time I was an infant, and grew up in a home where I knew every day I was loved. A few years ago, I found my biological mother, Maria, and 3 siblings I didn't know I had via a DNA test and Facebook. The first time I spoke to Maria on the phone, says Elizabeth Spears, she lives in Alabama, not too far from my parents. I live in Brooklyn. She apologized repeatedly for giving me up, told me she loved me, and I would always be her family. Your blood, she would say later. I told her and continue to tell her every time she brings it up, the apology is unnecessary. I had a wonderful childhood. I believe she made the right decision. But she remains heartbroken about the years we missed together. Okay, so question. She remains heartbroken about the years we missed together. You know what years you would have missed together had she chosen to flush you down a toilet? All of them. There would be no years together. And guess what? Her heartbreak over giving you up for adoption, that is a downside risk to the massive upside of you being alive to write this op-ed. This is such insane stuff. Okay, so back to this piece, again, in the New York Times, about a woman who was adopted, but thinks adoption is not the option when it comes to adoption versus abortion. Quote, both Maria and my mom, Alice, oppose abortion on religious grounds. My mom is white and Southern Baptist. Maria is Hispanic and Pentecostal. Both like to point to me to justify their beliefs, saying that had Maria gotten an abortion, I would not exist. It's a familiar argument. The anti-abortion movement likes to invoke Nobel Prize winners who might never have materialized, or potential adoptees who might have cured cancer if they hadn't been aborted at 8 weeks. I'm no Nobel Prize winner, but I still resent being used as a political football by the right. I noticed that you're here to resent it. That's the thing I noticed. You're here to resent being used as a political football because you're not dead. That's one of the things I noticed. I believe that abortion is a form of health care and that every woman should have access to it if she needs it. Oh, do you? I love these sorts of euphemisms. I believe that murder is a form of cooking. Just fill in the blank with some random, completely bizarre non sequitur. I believe that abortion is a form of sport. I believe that abortion is a form of art. I believe that abortion is a form of calligraphy. Like, what the? Healthcare for whom? Not the person you're killing. Perhaps more than that, I resent the suggestion by people like Justice Barrett that adoption is a simple solution. I resent it on behalf of Maria, who found the choice she made traumatizing and still feels that pain 44 years later. Even when an adoption works out well, as it did in my case, it is still fraught. Wait, so let me get this straight. You are alive to resent the adoption of you on behalf of your mother, who wanted to give you up for adoption and is happy she gave you up for adoption and feels morally blessed that you are alive and that she didn't murder you. But you resent that you are alive on behalf of the mother who is happy to keep you alive so that you could lead a good life where you end up as a Democratic strategist pumping out garbage like this for the New York Times. honest to God, this is like a bizarre time loop from Back to the Future 2, in which you're alive to complain about the fact that you are alive. When I echo Maria in saying she gave me up, the language always rankles adoptive parents because it introduces an unpleasant complexity, implying that my birth mother was not completely happy with her choice, or worse, that it made her miserable. But that is sometimes the case, even when adoption is the best option for all involved. Adoption is not always an unallied good. It's a complicated choice in a situation that has no right or wrong answer. No, I found the wrong answer. It's killing you. That's it. Was it super hard? I feel like when the options are woman can keep child and struggle through the difficulties of raising a child as, say, a single mom, or woman can give up child to a two-parent family that is more prosperous and struggle with that decision. The choice that's bad is the one where you just kill the kid. That would be the wrong choice. So you have two choices, both of which have some costs on a personal level, and both of which have some benefits, but both of which have a pretty major upside, which is that you didn't murder the kid. That's like, do you understand the insane moral delusions you have to go through to come to a pro-choice position via this article? And yet this is in the New York Times. If the court overturns Roe versus Wade, says Elizabeth Spear in the New York Times, many women will be forced to give birth to children they did not want and did not feel they could afford to support. Well, you know, they forced to give birth. The language of forced to give birth to children is so bizarre. It's so weird. Again, forced to get pregnant is one thing because typically we call that rape, right? If somebody is forced to get pregnant, that is a grave moral sin. Forced to give birth is, you mean like your body goes through the process that normally happens when when a baby is conceived? You're forced to give birth assumes that there is like another natural option. There is no, the intervention is the termination of the pregnancy. It's sort of like saying water runs downhill, okay? And so if you take water and you put it at the top of a hill and it goes to the bottom of a hill, and I don't stop that water from running downhill, the water was forced to reach the bottom of the hill. No, if you rechannel the water, you're performing the intervention. There's a massive logical fallacy right here. Forced to give birth? Nope, that's the natural process. Just as no one forces you to have a digestive tract that processes food. You're not, like, what are we talking about here? But this does go to the baseline idea that there's a fundamental underlying idea, which is that biology is force. These folks believe that there is a spirit in the machine and that any threat to that spirit of autonomy is an active force and must be defeated. This is what unites the pro-abortion movement and the transgender movement, is the idea that biology is an obstacle to your greatest dreams and to your free-floating autonomy that is disconnected from your biological reality. But, says Elizabeth Spears, while pregnant, women will undergo the bonding with a child that happens by biological design as an embryo develops into a living, breathing, conscious human. And then that child will be taken away. Wait a sec. Hold up. Just hold up. I swear, every sentence here is just a gem of logical fallacy and insanity. So she's arguing against abortion. Let me read those sentences again. While pregnant, women will undergo the bonding with a child that happens by biological design as an embryo develops into a living, breathing, conscious human. And then that child will be taken away. Not taken away, you're giving it up for adoption. It's your decision. You could keep the child. 2, you know what takes the child away also? Again, I can't overstate this. You know what takes a child away and ends that bonding with the child? Killing it. Pretty good way of ending that bonding with the child. When I say, you make it sound like adoption is kidnapping. No, but I can tell you, what ends the biological design in which the embryo, you bond with the embryo and the fetus, that would be death. That ends that biological design. The right likes to suggest that abortion is a traumatic experience for women, a last resort, a painful memory. But adoption is often just as traumatic as the right thinks abortion is, if not more so, as a woman has to relinquish not a lump of cells, but a fully formed baby she has lived with for 9 months. Again, that's her decision as to whether she wishes to give the baby up for adoption. But the complete denial that there is another character in this story is the part that's truly galling. I'm a mother myself, says Elizabeth Spears, to an adorable 6-year-old self-proclaimed Fortnite expert, and as often the case, I did not know I was pregnant with him until the usual symptoms appeared a few weeks into the pregnancy. As anyone who has gestated a human will tell you, that's a romantic way of talking about pregnancy, gestated a human. There's a vast difference between the 4th week of pregnancy and the 40th. By the 40th, you're familiar with your baby's regular rhythms of kicking and moving. When I awoke, my son would wake up shortly after. I'd feel him turning and stretching, or less pleasantly, jamming his precious little foot into what felt like my cervix. This is one of the paradoxes of pregnancy. Something alien is usurping your body and sapping you of nutrition and energy, but you're programmed to gleefully enable it, and you become desperately protective of it. It's a kind of biological brainwashing. And this often happens whether you want to be a parent or not, right? She's just rebelling against biology. She's literally rebelling against biology. My own biology is telling me I should love my child. Damn you, biology, saying I should love my unborn child inside my womb, growing and learning to love me. How dare you, biology? This must be stopped. By the way, I assume that she's an abortion on demand fanatic, which means that even at the fourth, she says there's a difference between the 4th week and the 40th week. But I assume she doesn't want any legislation to protect the child at the 40th week. So, no. But that's so crazy. I'm sorry. It's so crazy to describe pregnancy as an experience where your biology takes over and forces you to love this mewling, evil leech inside your body. Are there a lot of women who feel this way about their kids? Really? I've yet to meet one. I've yet to meet one who feels that the child growing inside of her at week 30, when she feels the baby kicking and she knows it's a baby, that is a leech. She loves it, but she wishes she didn't love it. My God. Truly, truly despicable stuff. Justice Barrett says Elizabeth Spears is well aware of the kind of biological brainwashing that occurs during biological brainwashing. Again, the natural process of pregnancy is not biological brainwashing. Brainwashing implies force. It implies Clockwork Orange style. I strap you down to a chair and I force you to watch propaganda. And that is not what we're talking about. Biological brain. Do you mean the natural process of childbirth? She does. Justice Barrett is well aware of the kind of biological brainwashing that occurs during pregnancy. She gave birth to 5 children. And yet she blithely seems to assume that a mother can simply choose not to bond with the child she's gestating solely on the basis she's not ready to be a mother or believes she is unable to provide for the child. No, you assume that because you assume she can kill it. She assumes the mother will be supported financially and otherwise throughout the pregnancy, even in a country where maternal mortality statistics are abysmal. She assumes that children surrendered for adoption will find a home and not a bed in the foster care system. No, she doesn't assume any of these things. Adoption system should be revamped and made better. But no, she probably assumes these things because she cannot fathom being in this position herself. It should be noted that Justice Barrett has 2 adopted children. So, you're a crazy person. These are assumptions that stem from the privilege of being financially secure, having never needed an abortion, and perhaps the assumption that women who do have something that do have done something wrong and must face the consequences. Well, yes, I do believe that women who have abortion have done something morally wrong. Yes, that is true. That's the only part of this article I agree with. In my experience, some on the right believe that the trauma adoption inflicts is a consequence of irresponsibility, but unexpected pregnancy is not a de facto function of bad decision-making. Like 99%, it is a function of bad decision-making. It can be a failure of contraception, okay, in which, that's true, sometimes contraceptives fail, which is why you really shouldn't have sex outside of a context in which you're willing to get pregnant. The product of a rape, I know that's super controversial. It's only controversial in like the last couple of decades, by the way. Like before that, all of human history, the notion that you should only have sex in contexts in which you are willing to get pregnant, that was a baseline moral notion for literally all of human history. But now it's very controversial. It can be a failure of contraception, the product of a rape. That's literally the only circumstance that you can talk about, by the way, in which it is legitimately, in which pregnancy literally has no relation to the activity of the woman, right, is rape, which is why it's the most controversial aspect of abortion law. A mistaken belief that a woman is infertile, there is no justifiable reason to inflict harm on women and the babies they might produce in any of these situations, regardless of judgment. Wait, who's talking about inflicting harm on babies? You're talking about why a baby shouldn't be adopted, a baby should be murdered. That is what you're talking about. The trauma doesn't just affect mothers either. Researchers have a term for what children who are adopted, even as infants, may suffer from later in life: relinquishment trauma. Okay, I have another term for what babies may suffer in the womb when they're killed, and it's just called death. So if I have a choice between death and relinquishment trauma, I'm going to go relinquishment trauma. We'll get to more of this in a second. I go through this detail to demonstrate just how far the left is willing to go. This is how far they are willing to go. Abortion is so sacred to them. It is such a sacrosanct issue to them that they are literally willing to say that it is better for a baby to be killed in the womb than to be given up to a happy family for adoption. It's wild. Alrighty, so just to complete this article from Elizabeth Spears, because the depths of delusion and insanity that Democrats are willing to go in order to preserve abortion is totally crazy. So there's this article in the New York Times we're talking about in which she argues that adoption is bad. This is how far they're willing to go. In order to preserve abortion, adoption is now bad. It's the worst choice. If you have a choice between adoption and abortion, you should go for abortion, according to Elizabeth Spears, who was adopted herself. Quote, researchers have a term for what children who are adopted, even as infants, may suffer from later in life. Relinquishment trauma. The premise is that babies bond with their mothers in utero and become familiar with their behaviors. When their first caregiver is not the biological mother, they register the difference, and the stress of it has lasting effects. See, if you're separated from mommy, you get relinquishment trauma. I'm sure that's true. You know what else causes trauma? I know, wait for it. Being stabbed in the head. It's a trauma, as it turns out. Being injected in the heart with poison. Little traumatic. Being flushed down a toilet. These seem like slightly more traumatic things than relinquishment trauma. Says Elizabeth Spear, I probably got off easy in that respect, in part because I did spend a few months with my biological mother before I was adopted, but that had the unintended effect of traumatizing my older siblings, who remember me as a baby who was there and then suddenly was gone. This was driven home to me by my older sister, Bobby, whose first encounter with me was over Facebook. All I can say is I remember you, she wrote, and I have loved you and missed you my entire life. As opposed to if you had been murdered, in which case you guys never would have met at all. What Justice Barrett and others are suggesting women do in lieu of abortion is not a small thing. It is life-changing, irrevocable, and not to be taken lightly. It often causes trauma, even when things work out. It's a disservice to adoptees and their families, biological and adopted, to pretend otherwise in service of a neat political narrative. Nope, again, I think that the neat political narrative is that adoption in all of these cases is better than killing somebody. I know these... So just to repeat, the left has now said contraception is not enough. You need to be able to kill a baby in the womb. They've said that sex is not connected to childbearing, which of course is very silly. They've suggested that the actual imposition is your biological process taking place. They've suggested that adoption is a worse option than abortion. All of these things are things they are willing to suggest in pursuit of an end goal, which is that men and women have to be physically equivalent in every way, which is unbelievably degrading to women. It truly, truly is. If this is the world that you want to live in with the left, then here's the thing. You'll be able to live in this world after Roe versus Wade is gone. All you have to do is live in New York. All you have to do is live in California. You'll still be able to live in this delusional, crazy world. And guess what? You will bear the consequences of living in that sort of world. But at least fewer babies across the country will have to suffer death at the hands of people who believe these sorts of delusional things. The arguments that the left has been forced to make in pursuit of their totalitarian anti-life position, truly astonishing stuff, and should be humiliating to them if they had 1 ounce of humiliation left in them. These are shameful, anti-human arguments. These are shameful, immoral arguments that are being made here. And they're taken as perfectly natural and normal and, in fact, morally good by the left. I don't know how twisted you have to be in order to believe that these are morally good arguments, that these are morally superior arguments, and the people who wish to preserve human life are the baddies in this particular scenario. We're in a battle for the culture and for our values. Like and subscribe to help keep our videos on the front line of the fight and top of your feed.